Sarah dragged herself out of the river and collapsed. She felt sore all over. Whether it was from the burns or from being thrown, she wasn't sure. After a moment of rest, she slowly got on her hands and knees. Her body stung and throbbed, begging for her to stop moving. But she had to get out of here. Gradually, she made the painful trek to camp. Up ahead, Mr. Patrick and BJ were running at her, each armed with a gun.
Sarah, are you alright?
Do I look alright? Where did you even go?
I panicked, okay? 2 other Toa were coming. I figured I could lead them away.
You're lucky I found your gun.
While what he did was foolish, we're glad you're alive.
He and Mr. Patrick then helped Sarah back to camp. When they arrived, everyone was shocked. Eric rushed over and assisted Sarah into the medical tent. Soaring above the trees, Lewa flew to Kininui. He and Tahu succeeded in bringing Gali to Gakoro, where the local healers began to work on her. Tahu sent him back to retrieve the other Toa. He followed the same river they found Gali in and was about to approach the waterfall. Up ahead, he thought he saw movement and quickly hid himself among the trees. Without vines, the Toa of Air resorted to leaping from branch to branch to investigate. Sure enough, he saw 5 humans crossing the river. They were the same ones he saw on the beach less than a week ago.
Can we stop here?
Fine, but just for a few minutes.
They unloaded their backpacks and rested along the boulders. Lewa stayed still and quiet, hoping they would soon pass, or at least spill some valuable information. As Brian took in the scenery, he noticed a small band of charted earth. Then a small light reflected off something and caught his attention. He stood up and walked towards the source. On the ground was a bullet casing. It surprised him and he picked it up. Then he noticed what looked like metallic blood several yards downriver.
Guys, someone was here recently.
Brian then noticed a small trail going into the woods.
Whoever's here might be the key to getting home. Come on, we need to find them.
Leo watched them strap their packs on and hurry into the forest. To him, it was odd that the group acted like they were unaware of the other group's presence. Then it dawned on him.
What if they didn't know? Wait, what did he mean by the key hole?
The possible answers troubled him because of how contradicting they sounded to Wanua's description. Until then, he would have to think it over as he flew to Kininui. Tahu was starting to get impatient. Right as he was about to march into Gali's hut, Nokama stepped out.
Well?
She will be fine, but she will take time to heal. But what exactly did this to her?
A human.
Nokama tilted her head to the side.
Never heard of them.
Tahu's face almost lit with surprise. Nokama then looked around.
Where did Lewa go?
I sent him to get the other Toa.
He then saw a blur move past him.
Speaking of which...
All 5 of his brothers arrived via Kakama. They all ran towards Tahu.
Is she alright? Gali is fine. She just needs rest. What about the human? Did you defeat it?
Not exactly. Our choice paths were either defeat the Makuta-san or save Water Maiden. It was sure luck that we arrived in time, otherwise she would have been human bones.
He placed a hand on Tahu's shoulder. To everyone's surprise, Tahu yelled and jerked his shoulder away.
Watch it. It hurt you too, didn't it? It's nothing. I'm fine.
Kopaka's lens swirled, and with his mask power, he looked through Tahu's shoulder armor. He walked up and grabbed his brother by the shoulder.
Hey, it's just a scratch. No, it's not. There's something lodged in there.
The Toa of Ice began to dig into the wound. Tahu groaned in pain and tried to jerk away. After a hard yank and a scream from Tahu, the pain in the Toa's of Fire's shoulder was gone. He looked at Kopaka, who held a small metal object in his fingers.
Interesting.
His eyepiece began to analyze it.
It's a rather soft metal.
Lewa completely ignored him and blurted out.
Wait, Gali was struck by the same thing.
Tahu gave his icy brother a concerned look.
I don't think they pulled it out of her.
The Toa then went inside Gali's hut. She was still out cold, with faint breathing. Kopaka went over to Gali and took off her armor. With his mask power, he found the bullet and dug into the wound. After a few minutes, he pulled it out. Almost immediately, there was a change in Gali's breathing. She was able to take fuller breaths. The 6 Toa were relieved and left the hut and went to an isolated lily pad.
Aside from the humans we met, did anyone else find any? No, but I did find this near my village.
Puhatu held up a large tube with a trigger on it.
What is it? Don't know. But it came with this.
He held up a rocket.
I wouldn't mess with it. It has to be human technology. I know, but I still want to know what it does.
Anoa looked over and noticed Lewa with a hand on his chin, appearing to be staring into space, something he had never seen his brother do.
You alright?
He snatched a toe of air. Lewa almost jumped.
Huh? What? Oh, yeah. I was just deep thinking.
Kopaka and Tahu gave him looks as if they had never heard of him thinking before.
On my way to Kininui, I stumbled upon a few other humans. They didn't sound like they were on a mission. They want to find a way out of here.
The Toa were silent as they took in the news.
You don't think they finished whatever they were sent to do you? Not likely. They never touched our villages.
Perhaps there is something bigger involved.
All the Toa spun around and saw the Turaga enter.
These humans seem to be masters of secrecy. Perhaps that's why your encounters have been so rare.
It makes sense, especially when there was evidence of their presence when the Rakshi attacked us.
Tahu crossed his arms.
So then the big question is, what are they planning? It's not like we can go up and ask them.
What he said echoed through Lewa's mind until his eyes widened.
Brothers, I'll be back.
He ran off and drew out his air katana.
Wait, where are you going?
Lewa looked over, but just for a moment, and smiled.
To fetch snatch my idea.
Sarah quietly stared outside while Eric finished bandaging her arm. When he was done, he handed her some pills and a water bottle and left. She stared at the pills before putting them in her mouth and taking a sip of water. She tilted her head back and swallowed.
You're lucky. I'm surprised he didn't try to take you.
I think he did. But his friend was more important.
Understandable.
There was a moment of silence between them.
You're pretty brave to fight a Toa. Someone like you should be leader.
Sarah glanced over for a second.
Brave? No. I was scared for my life. Honestly, I don't really know what compelled me to do something so crazy and stupid. As for the leader thing, not gonna happen.
Mark raised an eyebrow and shifted his weight.
And why do you say that?
'Cause nobody listens to me.
Mark cracked a smile.
Oh, I think I can change that.
Sarah gave him a suspicious look.
What if I told you that there is a way to move up the chain of leadership?
Not interested.
Mark frowned before shrugging.
So be it.
He then laid down and turned over his sheets. By the time Lewa landed in his village, it was almost midnight. To his surprise, the Matoran were up, gathered around the center of the village. He made his way through the crowd and saw Kongu and a few other Matoran debating on what the object Kongu found was. Kongu had brought several of them back, and each Matoran presented their theory.
I'm telling you, it's some sort of hat.
No, it's a melon holder.
He placed 2 fruit in to prove his point.
You can carry them around on your chest, while your hands are free to do other tasks. Or you can turn it around and make it a melon backpack.
Many of the Matoran seemed to agree. Kongu then noticed Lewa.
Toa, what do you think it could be?
A hanging basket, perhaps. But that's not why I've returned. Turaga Elder, I need to ask you a favor.
And what would that be?
I need to borrow your mask.
Matu looked at him as if he was crazy.
Why?
I have a plan for the new Makuta danger, but I need to be able to cast an illusion.
And just what is this new Makuta danger?
Humans.
Lewa noticed the blank stare on Matu's face. After a long pause, the Turaga spoke.
Very well, if it will help. But don't be pulling off pranks on your brothers. But Turaga Vakama is free game.
Lewa cracked a smile.
Yes, Turaga Elder.
After a quick bow of gratitude, Lewa took off with Turaga Matu's mask, while the Turaga wore a regular miru. Some of the Matoran giggled at seeing the Turaga looking different. He quickly shut one of them up with a quick whack on the head with his staff.
Respect your elders.
Takanuva stood guard at Gakoro's entrance. For the most of the night, rustling grass swayed by gentle breezes kept him on edge. Feeling confident nothing would actually show up, he began to doze off. The sound of rolling waves concealed Lewa's approach. The toe of air landed next to him and smiled.
Evening, Fire Spitter.
Takanuva jumped and fell backwards into the water.
Lewa!
Anything happened while I was gone?
The toe of light pulled himself out of the water.
No, but you had the others wondering what you were up to.
Well, now you will wonder ask no more.
smiled Lewa as he entered the village. All the other Toa were asleep in Gali's house, except for Tahu. He sat against the wall as he thought over several things. When Lewa and Takanuva walked in, he looked at them with surprise.
Well, what's this big idea of yours?
Lewa held in front of him the Kanohi Mahiki and some human clothing. After a moment of staring at them, Tahu's eyes lit up.
You're joking, right?
Lewa shook his head. Tahu sighed in frustration and stood up.
I don't think this is going to work. You're not going to be able to fool them into believing we're all humans.
I know, which is why I'm doing it alone.
That's even more foolish.
Kopaka stirred before awakening. His tired eyes stared at the trio.
I kind of like the idea. Think about what he can uncover being around them.
They'll know he's a fake. It would be better to use a mask of invisibility.
So long as they don't see your shadow or walk straight into you.
He then stood up.
I don't know if it's madness or brilliance, but Lewa's idea might work.
Tahu crossed his arms.
And if he gets caught?
One of us will keep watch from a distance. If something goes wrong, we'll bail him out.
Tahu stared at Lewa, who stared back with pleading eyes.
I'll think about it.
The Toa of Air smiled and grabbed Takanuva by the arm.
Come now, Fire Splitter. I need lesson help with my Makuta-san impressions.
Takanuva yelped as he was yanked out of the house. Kopaka walked up to where the Toa of Light had stood.
I don't like this.
Tahu looked at him with surprise.
But you just...
I mean sending in Lewa. Think about it. You would be resting the fate of the whole island on Lewa. Pahatu or Gali would make better impersonators than him.
True, but I think Gali would be just as opposed to this as I am. And I have no idea how a Pahatu acts compared to Lewa. You should see how well Lewa can do impressions of you around his village.
Kopaka almost cracked a dry smile.
By the way, since when did you start caring about our safety? Does it have something to do with Gali?
Tahu's smug look disappeared. He looked at his sister.
Kind of. I was there when it happened. She got hurt so quickly I couldn't do anything to help her.
You helped her all right, just not in the way you wanted to.
The early morning sun shone through the canopy as BJ looked around the camp for something to drink. So far, all he found were empty water bottles and jugs.
Great.
He grabbed a rope and tied it around one of the jugs. After strapping it around him, he took the other jug in his hand and held a rifle in the other. Before he left camp, Mark emerged out of his tent and confronted him.
BJ, I really need to talk to you.
What is it?
It's come to my attention that we aren't and can't always be here to protect the younger members of our group.
BJ raised an eyebrow.
Well then, what do you propose? We can't just take them with us all the time.
I know, which is why I think we need to train them.
To fight? No, they're just kids.
You don't necessarily have to teach them that. Just things that would help them if they got lost or separated.
BJ paused.
I'll think about it.
He then readjusted the jug on his back and made his way to the river.
I'm not confident with this idea, brother. Something bad is going to happen, I just know it.
He, Lewa, and Kopaka traveled upriver towards the location of Gali's fatal encounter. Lewa faced the Toa of Earth and smiled.
Don't worry, I'll be on my quick toes if something goes sorry bad.
But we don't even know where they are.
I have an act plan for that.
The three Toa then reached the waterfall. Kopaka used his mask power to scan the area around them for any sign of humans.
There's a trail they seem to have made. I'll go find them, while you two keep your distance.
Speaking of distance, a human is coming this way.
Lewa frantically got the Mask of Illusions on, while Anuwa and Kopaka hid behind foliage on the other side of the river. The mask glowed, and within seconds, Lewa went from a Toa to a young teenage human. Another human cautiously emerged out of the forest with a large water jug in one hand and a rifle in the other. Lewa straightened himself up and walked up to him. The stranger noticed and had a surprised look on his face.
Where did you come from?
Lewa stopped. His face went blank, for he didn't know how to answer the question. The stranger shook his head.
Never mind that. Are you alone?
Yes.
Well then, you're lucky you found me. I'm BJ.
Lewa cracked a smile of relief.
I'm...
His smile then disappeared. It never occurred to him that he had to make up a name. He tried to utter what came to his mind, but all he did was stutter.
Zach... Wow...
Zach?
Yes, Zach.
Lewa rubbed the back of his head.
My full name is pretty long.
BJ tilted his head to the side.
Good to meet you.
He extended his hand forward. Lewa stared at it.
I take it you don't do handshakes?
Sorry, I blanked out.
He shook his hand and took an awkward step back.
Anyway, I could use a little help getting water for the camp.
Lewa nodded and took a jug. BJ then pulled another jug strapped to him and began filling it in the river.
It's actually working. Gotta admit he had me worried there.
It's not over yet.
So, where are you from?
Well, I'm from the north.
That's not very descriptive. Are you talking about Canada?
Yes, Canada.
Well, that explains the name. Come on, let's get to the camp.
BJ nervously looked around.
There are things out here you do not want to run into.
Right as they were about to enter the forest, something on the ground glittered and caught BJ's attention. He walked over to a pile of leaves and brushed them aside to reveal Sarah's sword. Lewa's jaw dropped.
How did you get that?
Sarah got it. Though she doesn't really talk about how.
BJ picked it up and carried it back with him. Kapaka was stiff, while Anua gave him a look of shock.
Is there something you want to tell me?
I don't want to talk about it.
Well, were you ever going to tell us when they have your swords?
The two of Ice made eye contact with his brother.
You only have one sword. And do you really think I would tell a hothead something like this?
Anua paused and looked away as he sighed.
We'll figure out how to get it back later, I guess.
The two Toa then began to follow Lewa, keeping a good distance behind. Soon they saw smoke rising from the distance. They veered off the trail and went up a hill. From the top they could see the human camp, and what they saw brought frowns on their faces.
This is way more than I thought there would be. There has to be at least 3 dozen of them.
Kapaka's eyepiece zoomed in.
At least they're taking Lewa in.
Lewa stood at 5 feet and 8 inches of height, with spiked blonde hair and deep emerald eyes. He looked to be around 18, with slender build, but held a proud posture. Nearly the whole camp noticed him right away. It made Lewa wonder if perhaps he was off on his disguise, or if he did too good of a job. But when the younger girls whispered to each other and giggled, he knew right away that his cover was safe.
Everyone, this is Zach. He's the newest member of the group.
Lewa smiled awkwardly and waved. After a few minutes meeting everyone, Eric approached him.
We don't have much space. You'll have to sleep in the medical tent with Sarah and Mark.
That won't be a problem.
That reminds me.
He took the sword and stepped inside the medical tent. Lewa followed him in.
Zach, this is Sarah.
Lewa's eyes shot wide open. He recognized her as the one who attacked Golly. Quietly, he gulped.
Hi.
Sarah lay on her stomach. Most of her body was covered in bandages. She tilted her head up with an uninterested look on her face. Hi. She brought her head back down to her pillow.
Sarah, you left this at the river.
BJ handed the sword to her. Sarah took it and quickly shoved it under the bed. BJ left while Mark came in to get something. Lewa sat down on the opposite side of the doorway and rubbed the back of his head.
So, where did you get that sword?
From the mountains.
Ah. I heard you battle fought the Toa enemy yesterday. Is that how you got your trophy prize?
Sarah stared at him and raised an eyebrow. Lewa stared back until he realized that he used tree speak. He thought for sure he was caught. Mark had his back turned towards the two. His eyes were wide open when he heard it. His hands molded into a fist. 1, yes, but I wouldn't go so far as to say I won both times. And 2, suddenly Janet rushed in. Go away.
I'm not here for you. I am here for Zach. We want to show you around.
Sarah knew right away that she was attracted to him. Janet pulled him up.
Come on.
I'll see you later, I guess.
Sarah didn't say anything and buried her head back into her pillow. Mark watched him leave with spite. To be continued.